Okay, the first thing I want to ask for is some audience cooperation. In the last panel, there was so many good things that were being said, and I was sitting in the front row, and I couldn't hear a part of them. So if you start having trouble hearing any of us, I want somebody up there, okay, practice now. Okay, see if you can go like, excellent, you're very good wavers, okay. But if you start to have problems hearing, two hands I'm not sure, but anyway, if you start to have problems hearing, please wave, because we got brilliant guys up here, and I want you to hear every word that they say. So who are these brilliant people? Well, first of all, they're all about government. The last panel was largely, but not completely, civil society and people who are not sitting in the role of government. And so that's the essential difference. And that's what we're going to kind of stress today, for this part of the panel, is what you have to do when you're in government to add to this power that we all want to convene, which is resilience. Our first is Tekaline Mamo, and he is the state minister and minister's advisor in the Ministry of Agriculture in Ethiopia. And this is Tek. And when yesterday, the plenary session kept emphasizing the amazing job that Ethiopia had done and contrasting the resilience between the drought period in the 1980s and the drought period recently passed, and how the impacts were so different. And so therefore, there's a lot to learn here. We want to learn about what within government was really the major factors. And then we have Soxilo from Cambodia. Anybody who knows the history of Cambodia will know that for the last 40 years, it has been a series of real shocks, all of the shocks that came up in all of those circles. We've had a genocide, we've had civil problems, we've had war with the neighbor, we've had commodity problems, we've had a complete disruption of infrastructure, and so the rebuilding here has been nothing short of astonishing. And somebody who works mostly in water, I can tell you that the Phnom Penh water system is enviable in terms of leakage, delivery, service, etc., compared to even those in the richest countries. So the resilience within that particular institution and others has been really something. So that's what we want to really explore here. And we're really glad that you're here with us this morning. And then our third panelist is Talim Sudaryanto. It's not so difficult. It's me, Sudaryanto. Okay. But he says, call me Talim, so therefore that will make it a great deal easier. And he's the Assistant Minister for International Cooperation in the Ministry of Agriculture in Indonesia. And of course, Indonesia has had its share of shocks too, but nothing as much as the tsunami, the earthquake, and the terrible, terrible disaster that struck in the north. But there have also been commodity shocks and other very real difficulties that the country has had to contend with. But before we start talking, I want to ask the panelists each how many years they have had in government. I had 30 years in the Canadian government, which is very difficult when you're only 45. But I had 30 years. Why are you laughing? Is there some disbelief there? I had 30 years in the Canadian government. Tek, how many years have you had in the government of Ethiopia?
25 years.
So that's 55. How many years have you had in the government, Sok?
17 years.
17. Oh, we're getting into difficult mathematics now. And how many years have you had in the government of Indonesia?
So I'm the longest, 32 years.
32. He looks like he's only 35. So I think we're well up, even though that 17 threw me. Isn't that awful? But I think we're well up to over a century of experience in government. And so, therefore, what we want to distill this morning is the wisdom of how you translate all the things that have been talked about into what governance has to be. So that's what we want to get at this morning. Each of the speakers is going to have one longer intervention, not necessarily the first one, so that he can bring forward the ideas that he thinks are really important. But we're going to try our best to have a conversation about this. So I want to start this conversation with Tek, because yesterday the Ethiopian experience was certainly the star item down on that all the plenary speakers spoke about, not just because Ethiopia is the very generous host country, but because of the experience that took place. And I heard you say when I had the privilege of being out at a dinner party with you, that resilience and disasters really can be an opportunity. They really can create change. And I want you to expand on what has to be happening within government for that to happen. Because, you know, it's an old Chinese truism that you live in interesting times and disaster is the flip side of opportunity. But what has to happen in government for that to be a reality and not just a nice phrase?